The diner went silent after the second shot. Alara Vaughn was on the ground bleeding, covering him completely. An ex-Navy corpsman herself, she knew exactly what she was doing and exactly what it might cost her. The young Marine she had just saved tried to help her up, but she told him to check the others first. That is who she was. 72 hours later, her entire neighborhood heard them coming. Boots, dozens of them, marching in perfect formation down her quiet street. When she opened the door and saw their faces, she understood. Warriors never forget their own. But what happened next went far beyond gratitude. It went to the very heart of what it means to serve, to sacrifice, and to refuse to let another warrior fall, even when the war is supposed to be over. To understand why Alara Vaughn moved that fast, why her body knew exactly what to do before her mind could catch up, we need to go back. Not 3 days, 8 years. The emergency room entrance at St. Catherine's Hospital chimed at 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday that felt like it would never end. Alara Vaughn had been there for 14 hours straight. Her scrubs were wrinkled and stained with evidence of the kind of shift that leaves marks on your soul, not just your clothes. 3 cardiac arrests since she clocked in at 4 that morning. The first 2 made it. The third did not. His name was Jason Rodriguez, 47 years old, father of 3. Collapsed at his daughter's soccer game while cheering from the sidelines. His wife Maria brought him in screaming, begging, demanding miracles Alara could not provide. She tried anyway. She always tried. For 38 minutes, Alara performed chest compressions while Dr. Patricia Warner called codes and nurses rotated in to spell her when her arms gave out. 38 minutes of fighting death with nothing but technique and refusal to accept the inevitable. The monitor stayed flat. The pupils stayed fixed. The man stayed gone. Time of death at 10:18 in the morning. Alara stripped off her gloves in the break room afterward and sat staring at the wall where someone had taped a motivational poster about perseverance. The coffee in the pot had been sitting since midnight. She poured a cup anyway and wrapped both hands around it, like the warmth could chase away the cold that had nothing to do with temperature. Dr. Warner found her there 20 minutes later. The older woman had been an attending physician for 23 years and had learned to recognize the particular stillness that meant a nurse was replaying everything in her head, searching for the moment where a different choice might have changed the outcome. "Go home, Vaughn. You have been here since yesterday afternoon. You look dead on your feet." Alara did not look up from her coffee. "Just need a minute. I am fine." Warner sat down across from her. "You are not fine. You never are after we lose one. His wife is in the chapel. His children are with their grandmother. You did everything humanly possible." Alara finally met her eyes. His daughter is 12. She watched him collapse. She is going to remember that moment for the rest of her life. Warner reached across the table and squeezed Alara's hand once firmly, then stood. "That is not your burden to carry. Go home. Sleep. Come back tomorrow when you can actually help someone instead of torturing yourself over the ones we cannot save." After Warner left, Alara sat alone in the break room for another 10 minutes. The coffee went cold in her hands. She did not drink it. She just needed something to hold on to. At St. Catherine's, everyone knew Alara Vaughn had the best save rate in the emergency department. They knew her hands stayed steady during codes when everyone else was losing their composure. They knew she could start an IV line on a coding patient in under 30 seconds, could intubate in the dark, could keep someone alive through sheer force of will when the odds said otherwise. What they did not know was where she learned those skills. They did not know about the 2 tours in Afghanistan. They did not know about the 47 Marines she saved in a medical tent where mortars fell close enough to shake surgical instruments off the tray. They did not know about the one she could not save, the one who bled out in her arms while she refused to stop CPR even after it was obviously over. Alara had worked at St. Catherine's for 6 years. In that time, she had attended exactly 0 staff happy hours. She declined every invitation to birthday parties, baby showers, holiday gatherings. She showed up for her shifts, did her job with devastating competence, and went home alone to a house where she lived with her ghosts in private. The other nurses called her distant. The residents called her intimidating. The attending physicians called her invaluable. Nobody called her friend. Nurse Jessica Martin tried once during Alara's second year at the hospital. Caught her in the parking lot after a shift and suggested grabbing dinner. Just the 2 of them, no pressure. Alara had looked at her with those flat, careful eyes and said, "Thank you, but no." Jessica never asked again. The message was clear. Alara Vaughn did not do relationships. She did not do connections. She did not let anyone close enough to matter. It was easier that way, safer. You cannot lose people you never let yourself care about. Alara changed out of her scrubs in the locker room. Her left leg ached the way it always did after long shifts. She had been standing for 14 hours on a femur that carried shrapnel from an IED blast 8 years ago. The orthopedic surgeon who reviewed her x-rays during her hospital onboarding had stared at the images for a long time before asking how she was even walking. Alara told him she was used to it. He offered to schedule surgery to remove the fragments. She declined. Some wounds you carry on purpose. The drive from the hospital to her neighborhood took 20 minutes through downtown Asheville. Alara's truck was a 15-year-old Ford F-150 with a dent in the driver's side door from a parking lot incident she never bothered to fix. The radio stayed off. She did not want music or news or voices. She wanted the silence that came after surviving another shift without falling apart. Traffic was light at 3 in the afternoon on a Tuesday in July. Summer heat made the air thick and heavy. Mountains rose in the distance, the Blue Ridge Range. That was the reason she had chosen Asheville when she left the Navy. She grew up here. These mountains meant home in a way that mattered when everything else felt foreign. She could have driven straight to her house. Should have. She was exhausted down to her bones. The kind of tired that makes your vision blur and your thoughts slow. But Jason Rodriguez's face kept appearing in her mind. His wife's screams kept echoing in her ears. She needed something to reset the day before she went home to stare at her walls and wait for sleep that probably would not come. Riverside Diner sat on a corner lot 3 miles from Alara's house. It was the kind of place that existed in every small town in America. Red vinyl booths, black and white, checkered floor, neon sign in the window that buzzed slightly and needed repair. The menu had not changed in 40 years. The coffee was strong and cheap and came in ceramic mugs, heavy enough to double as weapons if necessary. Alara had been coming here after difficult shifts for 2 years. Nobody bothered her. Nobody asked questions. She could sit in a booth and drink coffee and exist without having to explain herself. The bell above the door chimed when she pushed inside. The air conditioning hit her face a shock after the July heat. The smell of coffee and bacon grease and pie filled the small space. It was 3:14 in the afternoon. The lunch rush was over. The dinner crowd had not arrived yet. That in-between time when diners feel like sanctuaries. Margaret Sullivan stood behind the counter pouring coffee for Franklin Calloway, who sat on his usual stool reading the Asheville Citizen-Times sports section. Maggie was 67 years old and had owned this place for 43 years. She knew the name of every regular in the story of half the people in Asheville. Her hands were weathered from decades of work, but steady as she poured. Franklin was 71, Korean War veteran, 1st Marine Division, served in 51 and 52, and came home to a country that barely remembered there had been a war. He came to Maggie's every afternoon at 3, drank coffee, read the paper, did not bother anyone. He and Alara had never spoken beyond basic pleasantries, but she recognized the careful way he held himself, the way his eyes tracked movement, even when he seemed focused on his newspaper. Old soldiers always know each other. Beth Carter moved between tables with practiced efficiency. She was 45, had been waitressing here for 18 years, putting 2 kids through college on tips and determination. Her smile was genuine even at the end of a long shift. She had that gift some people have of making strangers feel welcome without being intrusive. In the corner booth by the window sat Martha and George Hollis, married 44 years. They came every Tuesday and split a piece of lemon meringue pie. George always let Martha have the last bite. They held hands across the table the way people do when affection has become as natural as breathing. 2 construction workers in dusty Carhartt jackets occupied the booth near the bathrooms. The Brennan brothers, Mike and Tommy, arguing about the Carolina Panthers' prospects for the upcoming season. Their voices carried across the small space, but nobody minded. This was that kind of place. Alara slid into her usual booth in the back. Not the corner booth that belonged to Franklin, not the window booth too exposed. The booth with a clear view of the entrance and the kitchen door and both exits. Habits from another life that never quite faded. Maggie appeared with a coffee pot and a mug without Alara having to order. She set the mug down and filled it, steam rising. Rough shift, hun. Alara managed a small smile. Aren't they all? Maggie squeezed her shoulder, once brief and maternal, then moved on. She understood that some people come to diners to be left alone with their thoughts. The coffee was hot enough to hurt. Alara wrapped both hands around the mug and let the heat ground her in the present moment. She was halfway through her first sip when the bell chimed again. The man who entered wore desert camouflage fatigues that still carried dust in the creases. Marine Corps insignia on the chest, corporal rank on the collar. Duffel bags slung over one shoulder, worn at the seams from hard use. He was young, maybe 23, but his eyes were older, much older. Alara recognized those eyes. She had seen them in her mirror for years after coming home. Corporal Brennan Knox moved through the diner like he was navigating hostile territory. His gaze swept the room, cataloging exits and potential threats before he even approached the counter. His hand drifted toward his hip, twice muscle memory, reaching for a sidearm that was not there anymore. When the air conditioning kicked on with a sudden hum, he flinched just slightly before catching himself. He took the counter stool 3 down from Franklin and set his duffel bag carefully against the leg. When Beth approached with a menu and her warmest welcome home smile, he stared at the laminated pages like the words were written in a foreign language. "Coffee," he said finally. "Black and apple pie, I guess." Beth beamed at him. "Coming right up, sweetheart. Welcome home." Knox tried to return the smile, but it died before reaching his eyes. His hands rested on the counter, fingers drumming in a regular pattern. 48 hours stateside, Alara guessed. Maybe less, still adjusting to fluorescent lights that did not flicker before explosions. Still waiting for threats that were not coming. Still trying to remember how to exist in a place where people smiled at you instead of trying to kill you. Alara knew she should look away, mind her own business, let the young Marine work through his re-entry in private the way she had done. But something kept her attention fixed on him. Something about the particular quality of his tension, the way he held himself like he was waiting for impact. She could walk over to the counter, could say something. "Thank you for your service," felt meaningless. "I know what you are going through," felt presumptuous. "I was there too," felt like opening doors she had spent 8 years keeping sealed shut. So she stayed in her booth and drank her coffee and let him be. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for a fellow warrior is give them space to figure out who they are now that the war is over. She had no idea she was looking at the man she would take a bullet for in less than 8 minutes. The apple pie arrived. Knox picked up his fork and moved it mechanically toward his mouth, chewing without tasting, swallowing without enjoying. Going through the motions of normal, while his nervous system screamed that nothing about this was normal. Alara's leg throbbed. She shifted in the booth, trying to ease the pressure on the old injury. The shrapnel had been there so long, it felt like part of her anatomy. A permanent reminder of the cost of caring too much, of trying to save people in places where death came easy. She glanced at the clock above the counter. 3:17. She should finish her coffee and go home. Sleep if sleep would come. Maybe stare at the ceiling for a few hours instead. Either way, staying here was just delaying the inevitable return to an empty house and memories she could not outrun. Outside the window, a black Dodge Charger pulled into the parking lot. Tinted windows, engine running longer than necessary before the driver cut it. 3 shadows visible inside, indistinct but present. Alara noticed, her training noticed, but exhaustion won. She looked back at her coffee. That was her first mistake. The bell above the door chimed again at 3:17 and 40 seconds. The temperature in the diner seemed to drop 10 degrees. 3 men entered wearing ski masks and carrying weapons. Alara's coffee mug stopped halfway to her lips. Her brain performed calculations faster than conscious thought. 3 men, 3 weapons, 6 civilians including herself, 2 trained fighters. Maybe Knox at the counter, his body already shifting into combat stance, even though his sidearm was 8,000 miles away. Franklin in the corner, old, but his hands were steady. Everyone else would freeze. She knew this because 8 years ago in the deserts of Kandahar province, she learned exactly how the human body responds to sudden violence. But to understand what happened next, to understand why Alara Vaughn's body moved before her mind could catch up, we need to go further back. We need to go to where it all began. To the moment that shaped everything she would become. To the father she never knew, and the debt that would be repaid 3 decades later in blood and honor, and a promise kept across generations. Desert Storm, February 1991, southern Iraq. The sand was everywhere. In Captain Marcus Vaughn's boots, in his rifle, in his eyes despite the goggles. The wind carried it in sheets across the desert, turning the world into a brown haze that made visibility a prayer and navigation a guess. Somewhere out there in that churning void was a downed F-16 pilot, Lieutenant Grant Hawthorne, 23 years old, shot down during a close air support mission 6 hours ago. Marcus was 25, Army Ranger, 2nd Battalion, leading a 4-man search and rescue team through territory that officially did not exist on any map. The war had been going for 4 days, the ground offensive, 100 hours that would decide everything. Coalition forces were rolling through Iraqi positions with devastating efficiency, but wars are not won by tanks and missiles. They are won by the men who walk into the dark places and bring their brothers home. The radio crackled, static mixed with broken words. Alpha 2, this is Overwatch. Enemy movement. You're 3 o'clock. Approximately 100 meters. Marcus raised his fist. His team stopped instantly. 4 men became statues in the desert, listening, waiting, breathing through their mouths so the sound would not carry. He heard them before he saw them. Voices. Iraqi Republican Guard patrol. Maybe 6 men, maybe more. Moving parallel to their position. If they stayed still, the patrol might pass. Might. Marcus made the calculation every soldier makes in that moment. Risk exposure or risk the mission. The pilot was out there somewhere, alone, injured. Every minute that passed decreased his chances of survival. But if Marcus's team got into a firefight, they would compromise the operation. More teams would be needed, more risk, more time. He waited. The patrol passed, voices fading into the wind. Marcus gave the hand signal, move out. They found Lieutenant Hawthorne 30 minutes later in a shallow wadi half buried in sand, his left leg bent at an angle that meant broken bones. He was conscious. Barely. His flight suit was torn, blood on his face from a gash above his eye. But he was alive. Marcus dropped beside him. Lieutenant Hawthorne. The pilot's eyes focused slowly. Army. Rangers, we are getting you out of here. Hawthorne tried to sit up, gasped at the pain. My leg? Do not move it. We will carry you. Marcus's medic sergeant David Porter was already working, splinting the leg, starting an IV line. Morphine for the pain. They had maybe 10 minutes before someone noticed the patrol had not reported in, maybe less. Marcus keyed his radio. Overwatch, this is Alpha 2. Package secured. Requesting immediate extraction. Alpha 2 Overwatch. Extraction inbound. ETA 15 minutes. LZ is hot. Advise caution. 15 minutes. Marcus looked at his team. 4 men, including himself, 1 injured pilot, 3 weapons, and somewhere in the desert Republican Guard units that would be very interested in an American pilot. They moved fast. Hawthorne on a makeshift stretcher. Marcus and his team rotating carriers. The sand fought them every step. The wind erased their tracks as quickly as they made them. In the distance, the sound of artillery. The war grinding forward while they fought their smaller battle in the nowhere places. The extraction point was 200 meters ahead when Marcus heard the sound that changes everything in combat. The distinctive whoosh of an RPG being fired. Time fractured. Marcus saw the projectile arcing toward them. Saw exactly where it would hit. Saw that Hawthorne was directly in the path. Saw that his team was too far away to help. Saw all of this in the half second before physics took over and training became instinct. Marcus threw himself over Hawthorne, covered the pilot completely, made his body the shield. The RPG hit the sand 3 meters away. The explosion was thunder and earthquake, and the end of everything compressed into one moment. Shrapnel tore through the air in 1,000 directions. Most of it hit sand, some of it hit Marcus. He felt it punch through his chest, felt the heat, felt his lungs stop working properly, felt his body understand what his mind refused to accept. The medevac chopper landed 60 seconds later, rotors kicking up a sandstorm. His team returned fire at the RPG position. Hawthorne was screaming something Marcus could not hear over the noise. Medics were pulling Marcus onto a stretcher. Everything was moving very fast and very slow at the same time. Sergeant Porter was above him, hands covered in blood. Marcus's blood, working frantically. Stay with me, Cap. Stay with me. Marcus tried to speak. His mouth moved, but no sound came. He reached out, grabbed Porter's arm, pulled him close enough to whisper, Tell my daughter. Tell her warriors never quit. Porter was crying. You are going to tell her yourself, sir. Stay with me. But Marcus knew. He had seen enough men die to recognize the signs in himself. The cold spreading from his core. The way sounds were getting distant. The way the light looked wrong. He thought about his daughter, Alara, 3 months old. He had held her exactly once before deploying, had memorized her face in that moment, had promised his wife he would come home, had broken that promise. He hoped she would understand, hoped she would know he died doing what he was supposed to do, protecting his brothers. That was the job. That was always the job. The medevac lifted off, banking hard, enemy fire tracking them. Inside the chopper, medics fought to keep Marcus alive. But some injuries are incompatible with life. The shrapnel had torn through too many vital structures. His body was shutting down system by system despite everything they tried. Lieutenant Grant Hawthorne, strapped to a stretcher beside him, turned his head and looked at Marcus. Their eyes met. Hawthorne understood what had happened, understood the choice Marcus had made. "I am sorry," Hawthorne said. "I am so sorry." Marcus managed a small smile. "Do not be. This is what we do." Those were his last words. Captain Marcus Vaughn died at 25 years old, somewhere over the Iraqi desert, saving a man he had never met before that day. His daughter would grow up with stories, but no memories, with his Medal of Honor, but not his voice, with his legacy, but not his presence. But death is not an ending. It is a transfer of debt. And the debt Marcus created that day would take 28 years to repay, would travel through bloodlines and promises and the unbreakable bonds that form between warriors, would culminate in a diner in Asheville, North Carolina on a Tuesday afternoon when another Vaughn would make the same choice Marcus made, would cover another warrior with her own body and take the bullet meant for him, because that is what warriors do. Lieutenant Grant Hawthorne survived his injuries, spent 6 months in recovery, was medically discharged with a limp he would carry for the rest of his life. He tracked down Marcus's widow, told her what happened, told her that Marcus saved his life without hesitation, told her that he would spend the rest of his days trying to be worthy of that sacrifice. He made a promise. To Marcus's widow, to the memory of a man he barely knew but owed everything to, that if Marcus had children, if they ever needed anything, he would be there, would honor the debt the only way he knew how. 18 years later, a young woman named Alara Vaughn would show up at Navy Corpsman School, would push herself through training with a determination that bordered on obsession, would catch the attention of a guest instructor, a retired Delta Force colonel with silver hair and a limp and eyes that had seen too much. Colonel Grant Hawthorne would recognize the name, would run the records, would see Captain Marcus Vaughn listed as her father. KIA, Desert Storm, Medal of Honor recipient, and the debt would begin its repayment. Hawthorne watched Alara Vaughn complete the obstacle course in the top 5% of her class, watched her move with precision that seemed instinctive, watched her hands stay steady during stress drills when everyone else was shaking, watched her and saw her father's determination in every movement. After the course, he pulled her aside. "Vaughn, a word." She stood at attention. "Sir." "Your father was Captain Marcus Vaughn, Army Rangers, Desert Storm." Her eyes widened slightly. "Yes, sir, you knew him." Hawthorne looked at her for a long moment, saw Marcus in the shape of her jaw, in the way she held herself, in the refusal to show weakness. "He saved my life, took shrapnel meant for me, died getting me out." Alara's voice was carefully controlled. "I am glad you made it, sir. I owe him everything, which means I owe you, so I am going to make you an offer, unofficial, against about 6 different regulations. I am going to train you personally, make you the best combat medic this Navy has ever seen, because that is what your father would have wanted." She stared at him. "Sir, I do not need special treatment. This is not special treatment, and this is a debt being paid. You can accept it or you can walk away. But know this, I promised your father I would watch over his family. Took me 18 years to find you. I am not letting you go now." Alara held his gaze, saw the absolute sincerity there, saw the weight of an unpaid debt that had followed this man for nearly 2 decades. "What do I have to do, sir?" Hawthorne smiled. "Show up. Work harder than everyone else. Never quit. And when your moment comes, remember what your father taught me. Hesitation kills. Action saves. The mission is not the objective. It is the person next to you." That was the beginning. 18 months of brutal training. Hawthorne pushing her past every limit she thought she had, teaching her not just medicine, but the psychology of combat. How to make decisions when everything is chaos. How to keep your hands steady when the world is falling apart. How to be the calm in the storm. He told her about Marcus, about that day in the desert, about the choice Marcus made without hesitation. "Your father taught me something I had to learn the hard way. Warriors do not protect missions. They protect people. That is the only thing that matters in the end." Alara absorbed everything, became exactly what Hawthorne promised she would be, the best. When she deployed to Afghanistan, Hawthorne was there at the departure gate, pulled her aside one last time. "2 tours, come home from both. That is an order." "Yes, sir. And Vaughn, when your moment comes, you will know what to do. Your father's blood runs true." She deployed to FOB Phoenix in Kandahar province. 21 years old, hospital corpsman 2nd class, ready for everything except what she would actually face. The first save came 3 days after arrival. Lance Corporal James Davidson, 19 years old, femoral artery severed by shrapnel, bleeding out on the medical tent table while mortars exploded close enough to shake the ground. Alara's hands went inside the wound, found the artery, clamped it with her fingers, held pressure while the medevac inbound, held it while everyone else thought he was already gone, held it until the flight medics took over and got him to surgery. Davidson survived. Saved number one. Over the next 12 months, there would be 46 more. Gunshots and explosions and injuries that should have been fatal, but were not because Alara Vaughn refused to let them be. She developed a reputation. Marines requested her specifically. Get Vaughn on the bird. She does not lose people. It was not precisely true. No one saves everyone. But for 12 months, Alara came close. 0 combat deaths when she was treating. 0. Major Rebecca Santos, her commanding officer, watched her work with something approaching awe. You have got ice in your veins, Vaughn. Best combat medic I have ever seen. Laura did not feel that way. She felt terrified every single time. Felt the weight of every life in her hands. Felt the pressure to be perfect, because anything less meant someone died. But she did not show it. Could not show it. Because the moment she showed fear was the moment they started doubting her. Hawthorne sent letters, monthly, sometimes more. Tactical advice mixed with wisdom. You are doing your father proud, but remember what I taught you. You cannot save everyone. Do not let the ones you lose destroy you. Alara read those letters 100 times each, kept them in a folder she carried everywhere. Read them before difficult operations, after difficult operations, in the quiet moments when the weight felt too heavy to carry. Month 10 of her deployment, HM3 Donovan Sterling arrived, 24 years old, dark hair, easy smile that seemed impossible in a combat zone. Everyone called him Chef because he talked constantly about culinary school, about the restaurant he was going to open in Seattle when he got home, about recipes his mother sent from home. Alara's first impression was that he was too young, too optimistic, too trusting. She gave him 2 weeks before reality stripped that smile away and left him as hollow as everyone else. She was wrong. Donovan Sterling had something rare. He could walk into the medical tent after losing a patient and still find something to smile about. Could make terrible jokes during the worst moments. Jokes that should not have been funny, but somehow were because the alternative was screaming. He collected recipes from care packages, kept them in a battered notebook he carried everywhere, convinced the mess sergeant to let him experiment with spices when supplies came through, made coffee bearable by adding cocoa powder from MRE rations, small acts of creation in a place designed for destruction. Alara hated that he made her laugh. Hated that he was worming his way past her defenses with his stupid jokes and his stubborn optimism. She had spent months building walls specifically to prevent this kind of connection. You do not survive war by caring about people. You survive by staying detached, staying professional, staying alone. Donovan ignored her walls completely. 3 weeks after he arrived, they were on midnight shift together. Rocket attacks had everyone awake. The night sky lit up with tracer fire. Neither of them could sleep, so they sat outside the medical tent, drinking Donovan's enhanced coffee and watching explosions in the distance like the world's worst fireworks show. So what are you doing after this, Vaughn? Alara stared into her coffee mug. Nursing, probably civilian hospital somewhere quiet. You would be wasted in a regular ER. You are too good at this. This is keeping people alive in places where they should not have to die. I want to keep people alive in places where dying is not supposed to happen. That is the whole point of peace. Donovan was quiet for a moment. Fair enough. But you know there is no such thing as normal injuries, right? Pain is pain. Trauma is trauma. You will still be saving lives, just in a different context. Alara looked at him. His face was serious for once, stripped of the usual humor. Maybe, but at least I will not have to watch them die from bombs. She did not say what she really meant. At least I will not have to care so much. At least I can go back to being alone. But Donovan was already in, already past the walls, already becoming the kind of friend that would hurt to lose. 4 months later, they were sitting in the same spot watching another sunrise. 7 days before their scheduled rotation home. 7 days until they both got to leave this place forever. Donovan pulled out his battered recipe notebook, started talking about his restaurant plans. Small place, he said, maybe 20 tables. Focus on Pacific Northwest cuisine, fresh ingredients, seasonal menus. His eyes lit up when he talked about it. I am serious about the investor thing, Vaughn. 5 years from now, when I open that place, you are going in with me. I am a terrible cook, Sterling. That is why I cook, and you keep the customers alive when they choke on fish bones. Perfect partnership. Alara laughed despite herself. You have this whole thing planned out. 7 days until we are out of here. Got to have something to look forward to. He paused, then added more quietly, we are both making it home, El. Both of us. I am not losing you, and you are not losing me. That is the deal. She wanted to tell him not to say things like that, wanted to explain that making promises in war zones was asking the universe to break them. But he looked so certain, so convinced that willpower alone could overcome odds and explosions and all the random violence that killed good people for no reason. So instead, she just nodded. Deal. They shook on it like it was a binding contract, like belief could make it true. 6 days later, Donovan Sterling was dying in her arms. And Alara Vaughn learned that some promises cannot be kept, that some debts cannot be repaid, that sometimes you do everything right and people die anyway. And the weight of that failure would follow her for 8 years, would drive her into isolation, would convince her that caring was the enemy. That connection meant loss, that the only way to survive was to never let anyone close enough to matter again. Until a Tuesday afternoon in a diner when 3 men with guns walked through the door, and Alara Vaughn's body remembered what her mind had spent 8 years trying to forget. Remembered that warriors protect their own, no matter the cost. The convoy mission was supposed to be routine. Escort duty for a supply run between FOB Phoenix and a smaller outpost 15 kilometers north. Low threat assessment. Cleared route. Standard protocol. The kind of mission that gets logged as another day in the war. The kind that should not end in body bags. Alara was in Vehicle 3. Donovan was in Vehicle 1. Lead position, which meant he got to the danger first. The IED was buried at an intersection the convoy had crossed 24 times in the previous month. Professionally placed, expertly concealed. Victim-operated pressure, plate trigger. It detonated directly under Donovan's vehicle at 13:47 hours local time. Alara was watching through the rear window when the world exploded. First there was light, pure white light that seemed to erase everything. Then sound delayed by distance, but when it hit, it was thunder and earthquake, and the end of everything compressed into one moment. The shockwave rocked Vehicle 3 hard enough to crack the windshield. Then smoke and dust, and the sight of Vehicle 1 no longer recognizable as a vehicle. Just twisted burning metal and parts that used to be whole. Alara was out and running before her vehicle had fully stopped. She heard Major Santos screaming at her to wait for clearance. Secondary devices possible. Standard protocol was to secure the area first. She did not care. Donovan was in that wreckage. Nothing else mattered. The heat was intense. Metal burned her hands when she grabbed the twisted doorframe. Smoke choked her lungs. She crawled into wreckage that was still settling, still collapsing, still burning. Her medical bag caught on something and tore. She left it and kept moving. She found him pinned under the dashboard. Both legs crushed beneath metal and steering column. Blood everywhere. Pooling beneath him. Soaking through his uniform faster than physics should allow. The smell of copper and burning rubber and something worse. Alara's training took over, hands moving automatically even though her mind was screaming. Assessing injuries, catastrophic hemorrhage from both femoral arteries. Internal bleeding, broken ribs visible through torn uniform. Sucking chest wound on the left side. Shock setting in. Skin pale and clammy. Prognosis incompatible with life. But Alara had saved 47 people. She could save 48. Tourniquet on the right leg, pulled tight, tighter than it should go until the bleeding slowed. Tourniquet on the left leg, but the angle was wrong. The metal in the way. She could not get proper pressure. IV line in his right arm, shaking hands missing the vein on the first attempt. Getting it on the second. Pressure on his chest, both hands, blood pulsing between her fingers with each heartbeat. Donovan, stay with me. Medevac is coming, 3 minutes, just hold on. His eyes opened, found hers. He knew. She saw it in his face, knew what she was refusing to accept. El, his voice was wet, blood at his lips. Shut up, save your breath. You are going to make it. That is the deal, remember. We both make it home. Tell my mom. He coughed. More blood. Tell her I thought about her. Tell her I was not scared. You are going to tell her yourself. Alara's voice was fierce, commanding. The voice she used when she needed Marines to obey without question. That is an order, Chef. Stay with me. He tried to smile. It came out as more of a grimace. Alara kept doing compressions even though she could feel his ribs breaking under her hands. Kept pressure on wounds that were too big to close. kept fighting death even though death had already won and they both knew it. The medevac helicopter landed 45 seconds later. Rotors kicking up dust and debris, flight medics running toward them with proper equipment and experience, and everything Alara did not have. Donovan died while she was still performing CPR, still refusing to stop, still insisting through tears and dust and denial that he was going to make it. Vaughn, he is gone. The flight medic's hand on her shoulder, gentle but firm. You need to let go. Alara kept going. Compressions, breaths, compressions. One more try. Just one more. Corpsman Vaughn, Major Santos's voice. Command authority cutting through everything. Stand down, that is an order. Alara's hands stopped, hovered over Donovan's chest, fell to her sides. She stared at his face, at his eyes that would never light up talking about restaurants, at blood that was already cooling because hearts only beat in living bodies. The other corpsmen moved in to process the remains. That was the term they used. Remains, like Donovan was already gone. Already just pieces instead of a person. Alara sat back in the wreckage. Her hands were shaking now, her whole body shaking. Someone was pulling at her arm trying to get her to move to clear the area so they could do their job. She did not move. That was when she noticed the pain. Her left leg was on fire. She looked down and saw blood. Her blood, soaking through her uniform pants from mid-thigh down. Shrapnel from the IED had torn through her femur. She had been bleeding the entire time she was trying to save Donovan and had not even felt it. Vaughn, you are hit. The corpsman's voice changed. Urgent now. We need to get you out of here. I do not care. You are going into shock. Move now or I carry you. Alara let them pull her from the wreckage. Let them lay her on a stretcher. Let them cut away her pants, impact the wound, and start IV lines. She stared at the sky while they worked. Clear blue. Beautiful day for people to die. The field surgeon at the aid station stabilized her, told her the shrapnel was too deep to remove safely in a combat zone. They could take it out stateside. She refused. Leave it, she said, her voice flat and distant. Just leave it. Why would you want to keep it? Because I deserve it. She spent 3 days at the field hospital before they medically evacuated her to Landstuhl. The Navy psychologist came by her bed and asked the standard questions. How are you feeling? Any thoughts of self-harm? Do you want to talk about what happened? Alara stared at the ceiling. I saved 47 people. Why could he not be 48? The IED was professionally placed. No one could have prevented it. I should have been faster. Should have gotten him out sooner. Should have stopped the bleeding. You did everything possible. You were wounded yourself and did not stop trying. It was not enough. The psychologist made notes. Recommended continued counseling stateside. Suggested Alara might benefit from talking to other service members who had experienced similar loss. Alara nodded and agreed to whatever would get the woman to leave. 2 weeks later, Alara requested discharge. Major Santos tried to talk her out of it. You are one of the best combat medics we have, Vaughn. The Corps needs people like you. I cannot do this anymore, Alara said. Cannot watch them die anymore. Cannot carry any more faces. What will you do? Nursing. Civilian hospital. Somewhere people do not die from bombs. What she meant was somewhere she could keep distance. Somewhere she would not care enough to break when the inevitable happened. Somewhere she could survive by staying alone. The Navy granted her honorable discharge in September. They gave her a medal for valor during the convoy attack, gave her disability benefits for the leg injury, gave her a handshake and a thank you for your service, and sent her back to a world that did not understand what she had seen. Alara Vaughn left Afghanistan with shrapnel in her femur and Donovan's blood on a uniform she burned the day she got home. She left with 47 saves that did not matter because of one loss that outweighed them all. She left promising herself she would never care that much about anyone ever again, never get close enough that losing them would destroy her. For 8 years she kept that promise, worked her shifts at St. Catherine's, saved lives with clinical competence and emotional distance, went home alone, built walls higher than anyone could climb. Until a Tuesday afternoon when 3 armed men walked into a diner and a young Marine in desert camouflage sat at the counter eating apple pie he could not taste. And Alara Vaughn's body remembered what her mind had spent 8 years trying to forget. The lead gunman swept his AR-15 across the diner with professional precision. His movements carried military training. Alara recognized it immediately. The way he cleared corners, the way he held the weapon, the stance that spoke of drill instructors and muscle memory. This was not some amateur with a gun. This was someone who knew what he was doing, which made him infinitely more dangerous. His voice cut through the frozen silence like a blade. Cash register now. Nobody moves and nobody gets hurt. Wade Garrison was 34 years old, dishonorably discharged from the Marine Corps 3 years ago for theft. Spiraled downward through bad choices and worse company until armed robbery seemed like the only option left. He still moved like a Marine even though he had lost the right to call himself one. Still carried the training even though he had abandoned the honor. Behind him stood Carson Webb, 28, shaking so badly the barrel of his handgun trembled in his grip. This was his first armed robbery. His hands were slick with sweat inside latex gloves. His breathing came too fast, too shallow. Every instinct screamed that this was wrong, that they needed to leave, that something terrible was about to happen. His finger rested too close to the trigger, way too close. The third man, Devin Pierce, twitched and jerked with the erratic energy of someone high on methamphetamine. 26 years old, criminal record stretching back to his teens. Shotgun in his hands, but no discipline in his movements. He laughed high-pitched and manic at the terror on people's faces. For exactly 3 seconds, nobody moved. The human brain struggles to process sudden violence. It searches desperately for explanations, for reasons, for ways to make sense of the impossible. In those 3 seconds, every person in that diner was trapped in that struggle. Every person except two. Alara's hand had already released her coffee mug. Her body had already shifted forward in the booth. Because 8 years ago in the deserts of Afghanistan, she had been trained to recognize that fraction of a second for what it was. The moment before hell breaks loose. At the counter, Brennan Knox's hand moved automatically toward his hip, muscle memory reaching for a sidearm that was 8,000 miles away. His body remembered being armed. His mind had not caught up to the fact that he was a civilian now, sitting in a diner in North Carolina eating pie. Alara saw it happening, saw Knox's hand move, saw Wade Garrison's eyes track the movement, saw Garrison recognize what it meant. Another trained fighter, a threat that needed neutralizing. She saw Garrison's weapon pivot toward Knox. Then Martha Hollis gasped. Just a small sound, barely audible. The kind of noise someone makes when fear finally breaks through shock. But in the tense silence of that diner, it was loud enough. Carson Webb flinched. His finger twitched. The gunshot exploded through the diner like a thunderclap in a closet. The bullet punched through the acoustic ceiling tile directly above the counter. Fragments rained down on Knox's desert camouflage, white dust coating his shoulders like snow. The sound was impossibly loud in the confined space, echoing and re-echoing off walls and windows and the inside of skulls. Ears rang, hearts hammered. Time fractured into freeze frames of pure terror. Martha screamed, high and piercing. George wrapped his arms around his wife, covering her with his body the way he had learned to do in air raid drills as a child. Beth's hand flew to her mouth. The coffee pot she was holding slipped from her fingers and shattered on the linoleum floor. Hot liquid spreading in a dark stain. The Brennan brothers dove under their table. Construction workers built solid, but violence reduces everyone to the same instinctive need for cover. Mike pulled Tommy down with him, both of them scrambling to get as low as possible, to make themselves small. Franklin Calloway slid from his counter stool and dropped to the floor in one fluid movement. Korean War reflexes still sharp after 70 years. His newspaper scattered across the checkered tile. His coffee mug tipped over, brown liquid running between the black and white squares. Maggie Sullivan behind the counter raised both hands slowly. Palms out, fingers spread, 67 years old. She had lived through recessions and recoveries, through the slow, steady accumulation of years that taught you when to fight and when to survive. This was a surviving moment. Her hands stayed steady even though her heart was trying to break through her ribs. Wade Garrison spun on Carson, rage and fear mixing in his voice. What the hell, Carson? What the actual hell? I did not mean to. Carson's voice was shaking as badly as his hands. She made a noise. I just reacted. Devin Pierce was laughing again. That high manic sound that came from chemicals flooding his system. His shotgun swung in wide arcs. No discipline. No control. This is great. This is great. Look at them. But Alara Vaughn was not looking at the gunman. She was looking at Brennan Knox. Knox had frozen when the shot went off. For 1 second, he was back in Afghanistan. Back in a place where gunshots meant incoming, meant contact, meant grab your weapon and return fire. His body was coiled, ready to move. Every muscle tensed for combat. And Devin Pierce's shotgun was tracking toward him. Alara's mind performed calculations at a speed that bypassed conscious thought. Devin was high, unpredictable, finger on the trigger. Knox was in uniform, trained, represented a threat. Devon would fire, not because of strategy or tactics, just because chaos felt good to someone whose brain chemistry was completely scrambled. Distance from Alara's booth to the counter, 12 feet. Time until Devon's finger closed on the trigger, 1.5 seconds. Maybe less. Angle of fire, direct line to Knox's center mass. Outcome: if Alara did not move, Knox would die. This Marine who had survived deployment, who had made it home, who was sitting in a diner trying to remember what peace tasted like. He would die eating apple pie because his body remembered war better than it remembered safety. 47 saves in Afghanistan. One catastrophic loss. 8 years of running from that failure. 8 years of keeping distance. Staying alone. Refusing to care. And in 1.5 seconds, all of that meant nothing. Elara Vaughn's voice cut through the chaos with command authority she had not used in 8 years. Get down. Not a suggestion, not a request. An order delivered in the tone that made Marines obey without thinking. The voice that carried across mortar fire and saved lives when seconds mattered. Every head in the diner turned toward her. Wade Garrison's weapons swung in her direction. Devon's shotgun paused mid-swing. Carson's shaking hands steadied for just a moment because human brains respond to command presence even in the middle of panic. And Alara was already moving. She launched herself out of the booth with explosive power. Her left leg screamed in protest. Old shrapnel grinding against bone, but she ignored it. 12 feet to cover, no time for hesitation, no time for doubt, just movement, pure and committed. Knox saw her coming. His eyes widened in recognition and understanding and horror. He saw what she was about to do, and his mouth opened to shout no, to stop her, to tell her he was trained for this and she should get to safety. But Alara was a combat medic with 2 tours and 47 saves and 8 years of survivor guilt driving her forward. She was faster. She hit him like a linebacker executing a perfect tackle. Professional form, shoulder into his chest, arms wrapping around his torso, all 140 pounds of her weight driving him backward and down. They went airborne for a fraction of a second, suspended in the moment between action and consequence. Then they crashed to the floor behind the counter, Alara's body spreading over his, making herself as wide as possible, covering his head with her arms, shielding his chest with her torso, protecting his vital organs with her own body. Beneath her, Knox tried to push her off, tried to reverse their positions because every instinct said protect the civilian, protect the woman, protect anyone but yourself. Alara's grip tightened, her voice in his ear, fierce and absolute. Stay down, that is an order, Marine. Devon Pierce's shotgun fired, but his aim was off. The meth made his hands shake. Alara's sudden movement surprised him. Instead of the shotgun, he grabbed the 9mm from his waistband, aimed at the pile of Marine and woman behind the counter, pulled the trigger. The bullet traveled the 12 feet between them in .001 seconds. Alara felt the impact before she heard the sound, felt it slam into her left thigh like being hit with a baseball bat made of fire. The bullet entered through the back of her leg, tore through the biceps femoris muscle, punched into her femur, the bone already weakened by 8-year-old shrapnel. The femur shattered. Not a clean break. 3 separate fracture points radiating outward from the impact site. The bullet fragmented, sending secondary projectiles through muscle tissue. It exited through the front of her thigh, carrying bone fragments with it. Pain exploded through Alara's nervous system with such intensity that her vision whited out for a second. Every nerve ending in her leg screamed damage, critical damage, catastrophic injury. Her brain flooded with adrenaline and endorphins and the desperate chemical cocktail that lets people function through trauma. She did not scream. Her jaw clenched so hard her teeth ground together. Tears involuntarily filled her eyes. But she made no sound, because sound meant distraction. Sound meant losing focus. Sound meant failing to hold on to Knox. And she could feel him trying to push her off, feel his hands on her shoulders, his body trying to roll them, trying to get himself between her and the gunman, because that was what he was trained to do. Stay down, she whispered through gritted teeth. Her voice was steady despite the pain trying to tear her apart. Do not move. That is an order. Blood pooled beneath them on the white tile floor, warm, spreading too fast. Alara's blood pumping from the entry and exit wounds with each heartbeat. The tile was cold, the blood was hot, the contrast was strange, distant, like it was happening to someone else's body. Knox's voice breaking. You are shot. Let me help you. Check the others first. You are bleeding out. Then stop arguing and stay still. Her grip on his shoulders never loosened. She kept herself spread over him. Maximum coverage, making her body a shield. If Devon fired again, he would have to shoot through her first. That was acceptable. That was the job. That was what you did for your brothers. What is your name? She asked, because keeping him talking meant keeping him still, meant keeping him alive. Corporal Brennan Knox, his voice was shaking. Ma'am, you need to let me up. You need help. Well, Brennan, she said, and even through the pain, her voice carried that calm competence that had saved 47 lives. You are going to be fine. I have got you. Wade Garrison's voice cut through the chaos. We need to go. Police are coming. Move, move, move. Sirens in the distance, growing louder. Someone had hit a silent alarm. Maybe Maggie, maybe Beth. Did not matter. Help was coming, but it was not here yet. Devon was still laughing, still riding the meth high that made him invincible and insane. I shot her. Did you see that I shot her? And you are about to get caught for murder, Garrison snapped. Get to the car now. Franklin Calloway moved while everyone was focused on Alara and Knox, while the gunmen were looking at the woman bleeding on the floor. Franklin grabbed his ceramic coffee mug from where it had tipped over. Heavy, solid, perfectly weighted, he threw it hard. The mug hit Carson Webb in the face. The ski mask absorbed some of the impact, but the shock was enough. Carson spun, fired wild. The bullet punched into the jukebox. Patsy Cline singing Crazy cut off mid-word, replaced by the sound of shattering glass and sparking electronics. Beth Carter used those precious seconds. She had been frozen near the kitchen door, unable to move, unable to think. But Alara's voice, that command voice, had broken through the paralysis. Beth lunged for the panic button mounted under the counter, pressed it hard enough to hurt her thumb. Then she grabbed every dish towel within reach and dropped to her knees beside Alara. Honey, hold on. Help is coming. Alara's voice was getting distant. Check the others. Make sure no one else is hit. You have been shot. Others first. Always triage. Always save who you can save. Maggie was already moving to Martha and George, already checking the Brennan brothers, already doing what Alara asked because that tone of voice demanded obedience, even from a 67-year-old diner owner. Wade Garrison made his calculation. Police sirens may be 90 seconds out. Wounded woman, witnesses, no money. The risk-reward ratio had just collapsed. Carson, Devon, we are done. Out the door now. Devon wanted to fire again, wanted to finish what he started, but Garrison grabbed his arm and physically dragged him toward the exit. Carson followed, still dazed from the coffee mug impact. The bell above the door chimed as they left. Cheerful, absurd sound, engine roaring as the Dodge Charger peeled out of the parking lot, tires screeching, then just sirens getting louder and the sound of Alara's breathing, shallow and rapid. Knox finally managed to slide out from under her, finally able to see the damage, the blood soaking through her scrubs, pooling on the floor. So much blood, the wound in her thigh, entry and exit, bone visible through torn tissue. His basic combat medical training kicked in. Pressure, stop the bleeding, keep her conscious. Beth was already there with towels. Franklin pulled a tablecloth from the nearest table, clean white cotton. Between the three of them, they packed the wounds, applied pressure, tried to slow the bleeding that was draining Alara's life onto the checkerboard floor. Alara's vision was blurring at the edges. Sound was getting distant, underwater. Cold spreading through her body despite the July heat. Shock, her clinical mind noted. Blood loss significant. Femoral artery involvement possible. Knox's face appeared above her. Young face. Scared face. Alive face. Stay with me, ma'am. Help is coming. You are going to be fine. Alara tried to smile. That is my line. What is your name? I need your name. Alara. Alara Vaughn. Alara, you are going to be okay. Ambulance is almost here. Tell me you are okay. She could barely get the words out. Need to know you are okay. I am okay. Knox was crying now, could not help it. I am okay because of you. Good, that is good. Donovan's voice in her memory, dying in her arms 8 years ago. Tell her I was not scared. And Alara had not saved him, had failed to be fast enough, good enough. But she had saved Knox. 48 save, 8 years late. But it counted, it had to count. The darkness pulled at her. She fought to stay conscious, fought to keep her eyes open, fought to see Knox alive one more time before the black took her. Blue lights flashing through the diner windows, car doors slamming, boots running, radio chatter, Asheville PD officers entering with weapons drawn, securing the scene, getting descriptions. Black Dodge Charger. 3 males armed and dangerous. Heading north on Highway 74, and all units be advised. Paramedics rushing in with equipment and stretchers and the professional calm that emergency workers carry like armor. The lead medic dropped beside Alara. Assessed the wound in seconds. GSW to left femur, significant blood loss, possible arterial involvement. His hands moved with practiced efficiency. Pressure bandage, IV line, neck brace as a precaution. Ma'am, can you hear me, ma'am? Stay with us. Alara's eyes found his. Corpsman, Navy, 2 tours. The medic's expression changed. Understanding, respect. Then you know you are in trouble. Yeah, Alara's voice was barely a whisper. I know. Knox refused to leave her side, stood next to the gurney as they loaded her, his uniform soaked with her blood. Paramedics tried to make him stay, needed room to work, but he climbed into the ambulance anyway, and nobody had the heart to stop him. He held her hand the entire ride to St. Catherine's Hospital, watched the paramedic work, watched the monitor showing her heart rate and blood pressure and oxygen saturation. All the numbers that told the story of a body trying to survive catastrophic trauma. Alara drifted in and out, aware of movement, of sirens, of Knox's voice talking to her, telling her to hold on, telling her she was going to make it, telling her he owed her everything. She heard him pull out his phone, heard him dial, heard him speak to someone with the formal respect that meant he was talking to a superior officer. Major Donovan, it is Corporal Knox. I need to report something. A pause. An ex-Marine nurse just took a bullet for me. She threw herself over me in a diner robbery. She is shot. Femur. Critical. She is in the ambulance now. Another pause. Yes, ma'am. Hospital corpsman 2nd class. 2 tours Afghanistan. She did not hesitate, ma'am. Just moved. She saved my life. One more pause. Then Knox gave the information that would change everything. St. Catherine's Hospital, Asheville, North Carolina. Yes, ma'am. I will stay with her. He ended the call, squeezed Alara's hand. Alara wanted to tell him not to make a big deal out of this, wanted to tell him not to call anyone, not to spread the story, to just let her recover in private the way she had done everything for the past 8 years. But she could not form the words. The darkness was too strong, the blood loss too much, the blood loss too She let it take her, let consciousness slip away, because Knox was alive. And that was enough. That had to be enough. Behind them, Asheville PD was already coordinating with state police. The Dodge Charger was spotted on Highway 74. Pursuit initiated. Garrison Webb and Pierce would be in custody within 8 hours. But that was later. Right now, Alara Vaughn was racing towards surgery, racing towards 6 hours on an operating table, racing toward a choice between living and dying. And she was too tired to decide which one she wanted more. In her last moment of consciousness, she thought about Donovan, about his letter that she had never received, about the promise he made her make to keep being the person who runs toward danger. She had run today, run straight into a bullet, run to save a Marine she did not know, run toward danger one more time, despite 8 years of running away. Donovan would have approved. Then the darkness took her completely. And 8 years of isolation were about to end, because warriors never forget their own. And the entire Marine Corps was about to remember exactly who Alara Vaughn was, what she had done in Afghanistan, what she just did in a diner, and why she deserved to be honored in a way that would change her life forever. The operating room lights were too bright. Dr. Patricia Warner stood at the scrub sink watching through the observation window as they wheeled Alara Vaughn into the OR. They had worked together 6 years. 6 years of Alara saving patients with ice-cold precision. 6 years of watching her arrive early, stay late, never complain, never connect. Warner had never known Alara was military. The x-rays told the story Warner had missed. Fresh gunshot wound, catastrophic, femur shattered in 3 places, bone fragments scattered through muscle tissue, but the old injury visible beneath the new damage. Shrapnel embedded deep, at least 8 years old based on the bone growth around the fragments. Dr. Michael Torres, the orthopedic surgeon, joined her at the window. He held up the films to the light. She has been walking on this for how long? Warner's voice was quiet. 8 years, maybe more. Been working 12-hour shifts in our ER on a combat injury she never mentioned. Torres shook his head slowly. The pain must have been constant. She never said anything. Not once. They scrubbed in together. Warner because Alara was her nurse and she would be damned if anyone else led this surgery. Torres because femur reconstruction was his specialty, and this one would require every bit of his skill. Alara lay on the table, intubated, unconscious, her leg elevated and prepped. The anesthesiologist had her under deep, monitoring vitals that were holding steady but concerning. Blood pressure lower than ideal, heart rate elevated. Body fighting shock and blood loss in the realization that it had been catastrophically damaged. Warner made the first incision, blood welled immediately despite the tourniquet. The bullet had torn through tissue with the randomness of high-velocity trauma. Nothing neat, nothing clean, just destruction. "How long is this going to take?" the anesthesiologist asked. Torres examined the fracture site. 6 hours minimum, maybe more. 3 hours into the surgery, Alara crashed. Blood pressure dropped from concerning to critical. Heart rate spiked, then stuttered. The monitors screamed alarms that everyone in the OR felt in their chests. "She is coding," the anesthesiologist called out, starting chest compressions. Warner kept working, hands moving faster, more aggressive, finding the bleeding source, clamping vessels, stopping the leak that was draining Alara's life. Torres was placing pins with the focused intensity of someone who knew this surgery was the difference between walking and wheelchair, between normal and permanent disability. 8 titanium pins, 2 steel plates, bone graft harvested from her hip to fill the gaps where bone had been pulverized. "BP stabilizing," the anesthesiologist reported after 2 minutes that felt like 20. "She is coming back." Warner allowed herself one breath of relief, then kept working. 4 more hours. 4 hours of meticulous reconstruction. 4 hours of putting together a leg that had been shattered protecting someone else. By the time they closed, the sun was rising over Asheville. Alara had survived the surgery. Whether she would walk without significant impairment was a question only time would answer. In the waiting room, Brennan Knox sat in the same blood-soaked uniform he had been wearing for 10 hours. Hospital staff had offered him scrubs 3 times. He refused each time. "This is her blood," he told the nurse. "I am keeping it until I know she makes it." Franklin Calloway arrived at midnight, walked into the waiting room still shaking slightly. Sat down next to Knox without asking permission. They sat in silence for 20 minutes before Franklin spoke. "I was in Korea, 1st Marine Division. 51 and 52, saw a lot of brave men, a lot of heroes." Knox did not respond, kept staring at the surgery board, at Alara's name next to operating room 3, red light still on. Franklin continued, "But what she did, that is the purest thing I ever saw, no hesitation, just action. That is what warriors look like." "She knew I was military," Knox said, "called me by rank. How did she know?" "Because she is one of us, son. Military bearing does not lie. She recognized you the same way you would have recognized her if you had been looking." Beth and Maggie arrived at 1 in the morning, both crying, both needing to know if Alara would survive. Knox told them what he knew, which was nothing except that surgery was ongoing and no news was good news. Beth collapsed into a chair. "She told me to check the others first. She had been shot, and she was still trying to do her job." Maggie wiped her eyes with a napkin embroidered with the diner's logo. "That is Alara, always taking care of everyone but herself. 6 years she has been coming to my place. Never knew her story. Never knew she carried that kind of courage." "Did any of you know she was military?" Knox asked. They all shook their heads. "She hid it," Franklin said. "On purpose. Seen it before. Warriors who want to forget the war. Build new lives as civilians. Keep the past buried until the moment demands they remember." Knox finished the thought. "Exactly." At 9:30 that night, 16 hours after Alara entered surgery, Brennan Knox pulled out his phone. He had been thinking about this call for hours, debating whether it was his place, whether Alara would want the attention, whether he was overstepping. Then he remembered her body covering his, remembered her blood soaking through his uniform, remembered her voice calm and commanding even while bleeding out. "Stay down. That is an order, Marine." She had saved him without hesitation. The least he could do was make sure her own people knew about it. He dialed Major Rachel Donovan at Camp Lejeune. She answered on the second ring. "Corporal Knox, you are on leave. This better be an emergency." "Ma'am, it is." Knox's voice was steady despite the emotion threatening to crack it. "I need to report an incident." "What happened? Are you injured?" "No, ma'am, because a Navy corpsman threw herself over me and took the bullet." Silence on the line. Then Major Donovan's voice sharp and focused. "Say that again, Corporal." Knox explained. "The diner, the robbery, the woman who moved faster than thought, faster than fear, who covered him completely and took the shot meant for him. She is in surgery now, ma'am. 6 hours so far. Femur shattered. She said she was a corpsman, Navy, 2 tours. What is her name? Alara Vaughn, ma'am. Hold one, Corporal. Knox heard typing in the background, heard Major Donovan's breathing change, heard the moment she found what she was looking for in the personnel database. Hospital Corpsman, 2nd class, Alara Jane Vaughn. Major Donovan's voice had changed, softer, reverent. 2 tours, Kandahar Province, 2016 to 2017. 47 confirmed saves. Silver Star recommendation. Medical discharge, September 2017. Another pause. Longer this time. Jesus, Corporal, do you know who she is? I do now, ma'am. Her father was Captain Marcus Vaughn, Army Rangers, killed in action Desert Storm, Medal of Honor recipient. Major Donovan's voice carried weight now, the weight of understanding what this meant. And there's a notation here. Colonel Grant Hawthorne requested career updates on her until his retirement. Ma'am, Colonel Hawthorne is a legend, Delta Force. If he was tracking her career, she matters. What hospital? St. Catherine's, Asheville, North Carolina. Stand by, Corporal. This is about to get bigger. Major Donovan ended the call, immediately dialed the duty officer at Camp Lejeune. Her voice carried the weight of someone delivering news that mattered. News that would spread. News that demanded action. This is Major Rachel Donovan, Personnel Division. I need to report an incident involving former Corpsman Vaughn Alara Jane. Hospital Corpsman, 2nd class. Discharge 2017. She explained the situation. Diner robbery, active duty Marine, instant response. Bullet to the femur, critical surgery. The officer on the other end was quiet for a moment. A former Marine took a bullet for active duty. Affirmative without hesitation. Spread this. Every Marine needs to know. The story moved through the Marine Corps network like electricity through wire. Camp Lejeune called Camp Pendleton. Pendleton called Quantico. Quantico called 29 Palms. Each base, same reaction. Recognition, respect, pride. One of ours saved one of ours. She never stopped being a Marine. We need to do something about this. Within 2 hours, Alara Vaughn's name was on a dozen Marine Corps Facebook groups. Someone found a photo of her in uniform from a deployment blog. Someone else found Knox's service record. The story assembled itself through collective memory and shared databases. Sergeant Mike Williams posted first. His status appeared at 2,300 hours. Story ex-Navy corpsman saves active duty Marine in civilian life. Threw herself over him during armed robbery. Took the bullet meant for him. Currently in surgery. This is what Semper Fi means. The post included Alara's photo. Young face. Serious eyes. Navy corpsman uniform. The photo was 8 years old, but the expression was timeless. The look of someone who had seen things, carried things, survived things. 1,500 shares in the first hour. Marines across the country who had never met Alara Vaughn but recognized her as family. Within 3 hours, the story had reached every major military installation in the United States. The response was immediate and unanimous. She is one of us. She honored the code. Now we honor her. Major Donovan made one more call that night, to a ranch in Northern California, to a man who had been waiting 28 years for news about Marcus Vaughn's daughter. The phone rang 4 times before a voice answered, rough with age but still carrying command presence. Hawthorne. Colonel Hawthorne, this is Major Rachel Donovan, Camp Lejeune, Personnel Division. Sir, it is about Alara Vaughn. A pause, long enough that Major Donovan wondered if the connection had dropped. Is she alive? Hawthorne's voice was carefully controlled. Yes, sir, but there is something you need to know. Major Donovan told him everything, the diner, the tackle, the bullet, the surgery, Knox's report, the fact that Alara had been living in Asheville for 6 years and nobody knew she was military. When she finished, Hawthorne was silent for a long moment. Send me the hospital address, he said finally. I am leaving in 1 hour. 48 hours after the surgery, Alara woke to fluorescent lights and the steady beep of monitors. Her mouth was desert dry from intubation. Pain radiated from her leg in waves, dull and throbbing and everywhere. She tried to speak and managed only a whisper. The Marine, is he? Dr. Warner appeared in her field of vision, smiling with relief. Alara, you are okay. The Marine is fine. Not a scratch, thanks to you. Alara's eyes closed. Good, that is good. Everyone else is fine too. You were the only one hit. Alara's voice was barely audible. How long was surgery? 6 hours. You coded on the table. Scared us. But you came back. Warner moved closer. Alara, why did you not tell us? Tell you what? That you were military, that you were a hero before yesterday, was not relevant. The hell it was not. Warner's voice was gentle but firm. You have been carrying shrapnel in that leg for years, working 16-hour shifts on a combat injury, and you never said anything. Lots of people carry things, Alara said. Keep working. Normal. Warner shook her head. You are not normal. You are extraordinary. And there are about 40 people in our waiting room who want to see you. Alara groaned. Please no. Too late, you are famous. The flowers started arriving before Alara was out of recovery. First bouquet from the St. Catherine's ER team. Card reading our hero. Second from Franklin Calloway. Simple message. You remind me why we serve. Third from Knox with no words, just the Marine Corps emblem on the card. By the end of day 140, arrangements crowded her room. Alara stared at them with the uncomfortable expression of someone who had spent 8 years avoiding exactly this kind of attention. Day 2 began with Knox appearing at 0800 sharp. Clean uniform finally, carrying a book, The Things They Had Carried by Tim O'Brien. Thought you might want something to read, he said. Alara looked at him from the hospital bed. Corporal, you do not need to be here. With respect, ma'am. Yes, I do. He sat in the corner chair, made clear he was not leaving. They sat in silence for an hour. Alara too exhausted to protest, Knox too determined to be moved. Finally, Alara spoke. Why did you call your commanding officer? Knox met her eyes. Because what you did needed to be known. I do not want recognition. Just wanted to help. Too late, ma'am. The whole Corps knows, and they are planning something. Alara closed her eyes. Please tell me they are not. Knox smiled slightly. Would not dream of spoiling the surprise. Franklin arrived that afternoon. Brought coffee from Riverside Diner in a thermos because hospital coffee was terrible and Alara deserved better. He sat beside her bed without asking permission. Old soldiers do not need permission. Want to tell you something, he said after a while. Came home from Korea in '53. Carried guilt for 70 years. Survivor's guilt. Why me and not them? Alara understood. Same weight she had been carrying since Donovan died. Watched you on that floor, Franklin continued, covering that boy, refusing to let him up even though you were bleeding out. And I finally understood. Understood why we serve. Not for country, not for flags. For them. The person next to us. You showed me that. So thank you. Alara felt tears threatening, swallowed them back. You do not need to thank me. Yes, I do. You gave me permission to let go of 70 years of guilt. That matters. Beth and Maggie came that evening, brought soup, Maggie's recipe, because hospital food was garbage and Alara needed real food. Beth was still shaking when she entered the room. I keep seeing it, Beth said. The gun, the blood, you on the floor. Alara's voice was gentle. That is normal. Give it time. How do you deal with it? Not well, but I keep going. Maggie squeezed Alara's hand. We are putting up a memorial at the diner for what you did. Please do not, Alara started. Already done, Maggie interrupted. You remind people that heroes exist. That is worth remembering. Day 3 brought the visitor Alara had not been expecting. The knock on the door was firm, authoritative. The door opened and a man entered. Late 60s, silver hair cut military short, ramrod straight posture despite his age. He wore jeans and a faded Delta Force cap, but everything about him said military. Alara tried to sit up straighter despite the pain, recognition flooding through her. Colonel Hawthorne. At ease, Vaughn. You have earned the rest. He pulled a chair to her bedside with movements that were economical and precise. Sat down like he owned the room. Like he owned the world. The confidence of a man who had faced death 100 times and walked away every time. Sir, I did not. I was not trying to. I know. Hawthorne's voice was gravelly but warm. You just acted, like I taught you, like your father would have. Alara's voice broke. Sir, I failed Donovan. For 8 years I have been running from that. Hawthorne reached out and took her hand. You tried for 38 minutes. No one could have done more. The IED was professionally placed. You were wounded yourself and did not stop trying. That is not failure. That is honor. Alara started crying, could not help it. 8 years of grief that she had kept locked down. 8 years of carrying Donovan's death like a stone in her chest. 8 years of running from everyone and everything because caring meant loss and loss meant breaking. Hawthorne held her hand while she cried. Did not try to stop her. Did not offer platitudes. Just sat there like the father she barely remembered. Like the mentor he had been. like the man who owed her father everything and was determined to repay that debt through her. When the tears finally slowed, Hawthorne reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Weathered, creased, carried for a long time. Catherine Sterling gave this to me 6 years ago. Alara froze. Donovan's mother. How do you know her? After you discharged, I visited her, told her about you, about your training, about your father's legacy, about what happened to Donovan. Hawthorne held out the envelope. She wanted you to have this, but I held it back, waiting for the right time. Alara's hands were shaking too badly to open it. Hawthorne helped her, unfolded the pages, Donovan's handwriting, clear on the page. The letter was everything Alara needed to hear and had been unable to forgive herself enough to believe. Donovan's voice, his insistence that whatever happened was not her fault, his demand that she stop carrying his death as a weight, his order that she keep being the person who runs toward danger, who fights for strangers, who refuses to give up on anyone. Alara read it once, then again. Then Hawthorne was holding her while 8 years of grief finally found its way out. She sobbed the way she had not let herself sob since Donovan died in her arms. Loud, ugly, uncontrollable tears that came from a place deeper than words. He was not scared, Hawthorne said quietly. His mother told me. His last words were about you, told the chaplain to tell you that you did everything right. Alara could not speak, could only cry and hold the letter and let Hawthorne hold her the way a father holds a wounded child. After she had no more tears, Hawthorne spoke again. He would be so proud of you, of what you did in that diner, of who you became. You kept his promise, Alara. You kept being the person who runs toward danger. Alara looked at him through red eyes. I failed him. You saved 47 others, and 3 days ago you saved number 48. That is Donovan's legacy through you. Hawthorne's voice was firm, absolute. Your father saved me so I could train you so you could save Knox. 3 generations of warriors. That is what legacy looks like. He stood, moved to the window, looked out at the parking lot where 50 Marines would be standing in formation tomorrow morning. The Marines are coming tomorrow, he said. A lot of them. They want to honor you. Sir, I do not want attention. Hawthorne turned back to her. Too late. And frankly, you do not get a choice. Warriors honor their own. That is not optional. He sat back down. But more important, when you heal, you and I have work to do. Sir, training the next generation, your father saved me. I trained you. You saved Knox. Now we pass it forward. No more hiding. Alara held her father's Medal of Honor that Hawthorne had brought, worn on a chain around her neck now. What if I am not ready? You have been ready since the moment you threw yourself over that Marine. Hawthorne smiled. Besides, I am not asking. I am telling you. You owe me 8 years of avoiding what you were meant to do. Time to pay up. Despite everything, Alara smiled. Yes, sir. Day 4 began with a sound that did not belong in a quiet suburban neighborhood at 6 in the morning. The rhythmic thunder of boots on pavement. Dozens of boots marching in perfect synchronization. The sound every Marine knows in their sleep. The sound that gets into your bones during basic training and never leaves. Alara woke to it. Her eyes opened in confusion, then recognition, then disbelief. She struggled out of bed, grabbed her crutches, hobbled to the window. Each step sent pain shooting through her reconstructed leg, but she barely noticed. She pulled the curtain aside and stopped breathing. Her street was filled with Marines, 50 or more in dress blues, medals gleaming in the early morning sun, standing in perfect formation, more vehicles arriving, more Marines stepping out, joining the ranks, neighbors on their porches watching in silence, some with hands over mouths, some openly crying. Alara's hands shook so badly she nearly dropped the crutch. This could not be real. She closed her eyes, opened them. They were still there. She struggled into her bathrobe, gripped her crutches, began the agonizing journey to her front door. 5 minutes to cross her small house. Her hand trembled on the doorknob. One deep breath. Then she opened it. The moment those Marines saw her, saw the woman who had taken a bullet for one of their brothers, they snapped to attention as one. The sound of it like thunder. Perfect synchronization. Absolute respect. Hawthorne stood on her porch, helped steady her as she stepped outside. Whispered, "Stand tall, Vaughn. This is your father's legacy." Corporal Brennan Knox stepped forward from the formation. Dress blues perfect, face serious but warm. "Ma'am," Alara was crying before she could stop herself. "Corporal Knox, you did not need to do this." "Ma'am, with respect, we did. And there is more." Major Rachel Donovan stepped forward, commander bearing, voice carrying across the quiet street with authority that demanded attention. Marines, present arms. 50 hands snapped to salute simultaneously. The sound of it, the unified movement, the precision. It hit Alara like a physical force. She tried to salute back, nearly fell over on her crutches. Knox caught her, steadied her. At ease before you fall over, Major Donovan said. Her voice carried emotion barely held in check. Hospital Corpsman, Second Class Alara Jane Vaughn. 8 years ago you took off the uniform, but you never stopped being a Marine. 4 days ago you proved that in a way that humbles us all. Major Donovan's voice rang clear in the morning air. Your father, Captain Marcus Vaughn, saved lives in Desert Storm, gave his own life protecting Lieutenant Grant Hawthorne. You saved 47 lives in Afghanistan. 4 days ago, you saved your 48th. Corporal Brennan Knox is alive because you did not hesitate, did not calculate, did not consider the cost. You saw a fellow Marine in danger and you acted. That is the Marine Corps' highest ideal embodied in 3 seconds of pure courage. Marines never leave our own behind. You honored that principle when it mattered most. Today we are here to tell you something equally important. Marines do not abandon our own either. Not when you are wounded, not when you are recovering, not ever. You may have left active duty, but active duty never left you. You are still one of us. You will always be one of us. The presentations began, Marines stepping forward one by one with gifts that carried meaning deeper than objects. Sergeant James Rodriguez presented a folded American flag, flown over Camp Lejeune in honor of Captain Marcus Vaughn and his daughter. Ma'am, Alara took it with trembling hands. I do not deserve this. Ma'am, you earned it 4 days ago, and every day before that. Corporal Amanda Reeves presented a shadow box containing patches and insignia. From the Marines you saved in Kandahar, ma'am. They wanted you to know they remember. Alara saw the plaque inside. 47 names engraved. Dates, ranks, units, all the lives she had saved. All the people who went home because of her. She was crying too hard to speak. Gunnery Sergeant Mike Torres presented a handmade quilt. Marine families made this, ma'am. Every square is a different family. Every square says thank you. Alara unfolded it. Embroidered messages covered every inch. Hero, sister, guardian angel. One of us. The weight of it felt like love made tangible. Hawthorne stepped forward last. He carried a black velvet box. Military precision in every movement. He opened it slowly. Inside was a medal, gold star suspended from a light blue ribbon with 13 white stars. The Medal of Honor. Alara gasped. Sir, that is my father's. Your grandmother kept it safe. She passed away last year, left specific instructions. Hawthorne's voice was thick with emotion. Give this to Alara when she is ready, when she stops running from who she is. He lifted the medal from the box, placed it around Alara's neck. Your father would be so proud. Not just of what you did 4 days ago, of everything you became. You carried his legacy without even knowing him. That is honor. Knox stepped forward with one final envelope. Ma'am, the Marine Corps could not organize fast enough, but individual Marines could. He handed her the envelope. Alara opened it with shaking hands. Inside was a check, $387,000. She stared at it. I cannot accept this. Already deposited in an account set up for you, ma'am, for medical expenses, for recovery, for whatever you need. Knox's voice was steady. 287,000 Marines donated, from privates to generals, through chain of command, not the internet, not strangers, brothers and sisters, because you are family. Hawthorne spoke quietly beside her own. For the academy we are building, together. Major Donovan gave one final order. Marines, order arms. The salutes dropped in perfect unison. Then one by one they approached, not as a formation, as individuals, each thanking Alara personally. Knox first. I owe you my life. I will never forget. Alara gripped his hand. You do not owe me anything. Ma'am, with respect, I owe you everything, and I am spending the rest of my life paying that debt forward. It took 90 minutes of handshakes and hugs and tears, 90 minutes of being told she mattered. She was valued. She was one of them. By the time the last Marine left, Alara was physically and emotionally exhausted. Hawthorne helped her inside. The house was full. Flowers, food, gifts, evidence of community and care. Alara collapsed into a chair. holding Donovan's letter in one hand and her father's Medal of Honor in the other. For the first time in 8 years, she felt like she belonged somewhere. 6 months later, Alora walked into the Asheville County Courthouse on a cane instead of crutches. The limp was permanent, but she had learned to move with it. Her father's Medal of Honor hung on a chain around her neck. She wore dress blues that Hawthorne had arranged, honorary but earned. Wade Garrison, Carson Webb, and Devin Pierce sat at the defense table in orange jumpsuits. They had been caught within 8 hours. Security footage, witness statements, a high-speed chase that ended with their charger wrapped around a telephone pole. The case was simple. Alora took the witness stand. The prosecutor's questions were straightforward. Alora's answers were factual, unemotional. She described the robbery, her assessment, her action, the gunshot, clinical precision even when discussing her own injury. Miss Vaughn, why did you act? Because Corporal Knox was in danger. Were you trying to be a hero? No, I was trying to do my job. That has always been my job. The defense attorney tried a different angle. You put yourself in unnecessary danger. Alora's voice stayed level. I made a tactical decision based on training and experience. You could have hidden. Let police handle it. Corporal Knox would be dead if I had waited for police. The sentences were delivered. 25 years for Garrison, 22 for Webb, 20 for Pierce. But before the bailiffs could take them away, Garrison asked to speak. Judge Patricia Morales looked at Alora. Miss Vaughn, do you want to hear this? Alora paused, considered. Yes, Your Honor. Garrison stood. His voice was steady despite the chains. Your Honor, I was a Marine once, dishonorably discharged for theft, lost everything, made every wrong choice. He looked at Alora. When I saw what she did, throwing herself over him, I ran. Not because I was scared of police. I ran because I remembered what it meant to be a Marine, remembered who I was supposed to be. Alora stood slowly, walked toward him with her cane. Security tensed. Hawthorne in the gallery nodded. Trust her. She stopped 3 feet away. It is never too late to find your way back, Garrison. Even from here, even from prison. The uniform does not make the Marine. The choices do. Make better choices. Every day. That is the only way to honor what you used to be. She extended her hand. Garrison, crying, shook it. Semper Fi, Garrison. Semper Fidelis, ma'am. 18 months after the shooting, the Hawthorne Vaughn Combat Medicine Academy opened its doors. The facility sat on 20 acres of Hawthorne's ranch in Northern California. Modest but professional. Funded by the Marine donations and Hawthorne's own savings. 200 people attended the opening ceremony. Active military, veterans, first responders, local officials. The mission statement hung on the wall in the main hall. We exist to ensure no warrior fights alone. Training saves lives. Legacy honors sacrifice. Alora stood at the podium, 29 years old now, walking with a cane but standing straight. Hawthorne beside her, Knox in the front row. He had left active duty to become the Academy's director of operations. I did not do anything special in that diner, Alora said. I just did what any Marine would do, what any Marine should do. Show up when it matters. This academy is all of us showing up for each other, for always. The first class was 30 students, active duty medics, civilian paramedics, law enforcement. Among them was Specialist Olivia Martinez, 24 years old, Army medic, Afghanistan veteran. She carried guilt from losing 2 soldiers when she froze during a firefight. After the first class, Olivia stayed behind. Can I talk to you? They sat alone in the empty classroom. Olivia's story came out haltingly. Campus shooting during her college years before she enlisted. She had frozen then too. Watched it happen. Could not move. The guilt was consuming her. Alora took her hand. Then you will not freeze again. How do you know? Because now you are choosing differently. Freezing is a response. Running is a response. You are training a new response. And next time, God forbid there is a next time, you will remember this moment, this choice. 6 months into the program, the Academy held a live training exercise. Simulated IED attack. Multiple casualties. Live pyrotechnics. Time pressure. Students working under stress while Alora and Hawthorne observed from the control tower. The scenario victim was played by a man in a wheelchair, dark hair graying at the temples, easy smile that seemed impossible given his situation. Alora had not known he would be here. She gasped when she saw him. Sir, that is Donovan Sterling, Hawthorne said quietly. He works with us now as a scenario trainer. Alora stared. You knew. For 8 years. He asked me not to tell you. did not want you carrying false hope if he could not fully recover. Below them, students were treating the casualties. Olivia froze briefly when she saw the injuries. Knox, acting as instructor, snapped her out of it. Martinez, tourniquet, now I need your hands. Olivia moved, hands steady, training overriding panic. The scenario ended successfully. Donovan wheeled out. Good work, Marines. You kept me alive today. He looked up at the control tower. Saw Lara for the first time in 8 years. Their eyes met. After the exercise, Hawthorne left them alone in his office. Alara and Donovan facing each other. 8 years of grief and guilt and survivor's shame between them. Chef, Alara said, voice breaking. I am so sorry. I tried everything. I could not save you. Stop. Donovan's voice was firm. You tried for 38 minutes. Nobody could have done more. I do not remember most of it, but I remember your voice. Stay with me, Chef. That is an order. That voice got me through 9 surgeries, 14 months of rehab, learning to live like this. You opened the restaurant. Vaughn's Table, Seattle, named after your father and you. Wheelchair accessible. Business is good. He smiled. You are still my partner, Elle. Even if you are 8 years late, even if you still cannot cook. Catherine Sterling appeared in the doorway. Donovan's mother. 68 now. She had been waiting outside, giving them time. She walked in and embraced Alara. He told me what you tried to do. 38 minutes of CPR. I never blamed you. Not for 1 second. He would not want you to blame yourself. She handed Alara another envelope. He wrote this in recovery, made me promise. Give it to her when she is ready. Alara opened it with shaking hands. Donovan's handwriting from a hospital bed years ago. L. I am alive. Barely but alive. They tell me I will never walk again. Do not care. I am opening that restaurant. You are my partner. Deal is a deal. Stop carrying me as your failure. You did not fail. I am here because you refused to quit. 48 saves L. You got me. Now go get the rest of your life. Alara was crying. Donovan wheeled closer, took her hand. I meant every word. You saved me. And now we both get to do what we were meant to do. Train the next generation. Show them that surviving is not enough. You have to keep serving. Hawthorne came back in. Sterling, you are hired full-time. Senior scenario trainer. Sir, I cannot physically. You are exactly what these kids need. Living proof you can survive the worst and keep serving. Hawthorne turned to Alara. And you are finally ready. Alara held her father's Medal of Honor. Ready for what, sir? To stop carrying ghosts. To start building legacy. Your father saved me. I trained you. You saved Knox. Now we train them. He gestured toward the window where 30 students were gathering for the next class. 3 generations of warriors. Time to make it 4. 5 years after the shooting, they gathered at Riverside Diner on the anniversary. Same booth where it happened. Brass plaque on the wall. Here on this spot, Hospital Corpsman. Second class Alara Vaughn proved what Semper Fidelis means. The bullet hole preserved behind glass. Photos covering the walls showing the journey from tragedy to triumph. Alara sat with Hawthorne. Knox, Donovan, Catherine Sterling, Franklin Calloway, Maggie, Beth, Martha and George, Olivia Martinez, who was now lead instructor at the academy, Wade Garrison on parole volunteering at the academy, rebuilding his life one day at a time. Franklin raised his coffee mug. To warriors who never stop serving, even when the uniform comes off. Donovan raised his water glass. To sous chefs who keep promises, even from wheelchairs. Olivia's voice was steady. To teachers who show us we are stronger than we think. Knox looked at Alara. To the woman who taught me what always faithful really means. Alara stood slowly, held her father's Medal of Honor. To Captain Marcus Vaughn, who saved the man who saved me. To Donovan, who survived and reminded me why we fight. To Colonel Hawthorne, who kept his promise to my father for 28 years. To everyone here, this is service after the uniform. This is legacy. That evening, Alara taught her regular class, 50 students now. The program had grown beyond anything she imagined. She began the same way she always did. Good morning, I am Alara Vaughn. 5 years ago, I was shot in a diner robbery protecting a Marine I did not know. People call me a hero. I am not. I am just someone who made a choice in a critical moment. You are here because you want to know what to do when your moment comes, and it will come. The questions came as they always did. Were you scared, terrified? But I was more afraid of living with myself if I did not act. How do you live with the aftermath? I remember why I got it. These scars are proof I was where I needed to be. Alara walked to the front of the room, her limp visible, her cane necessary, but her presence commanded absolute attention. Every one of you will face a moment where you choose between safety and service, between comfort and courage, between yourself and someone else. In that moment, you will discover who you really are. I am not asking you to be heroes. I am asking you to be human. To remember we are all connected. That stranger's life matters as much as yours. And sometimes protecting them is the most important thing you will ever do. 5 years ago, I threw myself over a Marine I did not know. Took a bullet meant for him. It was the easiest decision I ever made because I knew his life mattered, that he deserved to go home, that someone somewhere was waiting for him. So when your moment comes, remember this. You are capable of more courage than you think, more sacrifice than you imagine, more love than you have ever shown. All you have to do is choose it. The room erupted in applause, standing ovation. Alara stood there, same limp, same scars, same warrior spirit that had never died even when she thought it had. Class dismissed. Go out there and be the person someone needs when their world falls apart. Be the person who shows up. Always show up. That evening, Alara sat on her porch watching the Blue Ridge Mountains catch the sunset. Her leg ached. It always would. She held Donovan's letters, both of them, worn from years of carrying, and the photo from the Marine ceremony. Knox arrived with dinner, Thai food, their weekly tradition. They ate in comfortable silence. Finally, Knox spoke. Do you ever regret it? Regret what? That day, taking the shot, the pain, everything that came after. Alara did not hesitate. Never, not once. I think about it every day, ma'am, about how everything had to align for us both to be there at that exact moment. Alara smiled. I do not believe in fate, Brennan, but I believe in duty. And that day, my duty was clear. The sun set behind the mountains, painting everything gold and purple. Two warriors, different generations, bound by one moment that changed everything. Alara holding her father's Medal of Honor and Donovan's letters. Knox wearing his tattoo. Alara's blood type. The date, Semper Fi. 3 years later, Alara stood in front of 200 students at the academy. Hawthorne in a wheelchair, now at 78, but still sharp, still teaching, still showing up. Donovan ran culinary therapy classes for PTSD patients in the adjacent building. Knox oversaw paramedic training programs across 3 states. Olivia was preparing her own students for deployment. Your moment is coming, Alara said. Maybe not today, maybe not this year, but it is coming. When it does, you will not have time to think, only time to act on what you trained yourself to believe. Believe you are capable. Believe you are prepared. Believe the person next to you is worth it. In Hawthorne's office afterward, he pulled out an old photo. Captain Marcus Vaughn and Lieutenant Grant Hawthorne. Desert Storm, 1991. Marcus's hand on young Hawthorne's shoulder. The same gesture Hawthorne now showed Alara. Your father would be proud beyond words. He would be proud of you, sir. You kept your promise. Hawthorne smiled. The uniform does not make the warrior Vaughn. The choice does. You taught me that. No, your father taught me. I just passed it forward. They saluted each other. Equals now. Teacher and student become partners in legacy. Semper Fidelis Alara, always faithful. 10 years after the diner, Alara stood at Arlington National Cemetery. Rain fell softly on the rows of white headstones. She wore her dress blues, her father's Medal of Honor around her neck. Hawthorne beside her in a wheelchair, oxygen tank at his side, but his eyes still sharp. They stood before Captain Marcus Vaughn's grave. He would have loved to meet you, Hawthorne said quietly. Would have been so proud of what you became. Alara knelt, placed a hand on the cold marble. I finally understand what he taught you, sir. It is not about the lives we save. It is about the lives we touch, the legacy we leave. Behind them, 200 Academy graduates stood in formation. Knox, Donovan, Olivia, students who became teachers, warriors who became healers. All of them here because one man saved another 33 years ago. Hawthorne's hand found Alara's shoulder. The same gesture Marcus made to him in 1991. Your father saved me so I could save you. You saved Knox so he could save others. That is what Semper Fidelis means. Always faithful, not just to each other, to the next generation. Alara stood, faced the formation. They snapped to attention as one. Present arms. 200 hands rose in salute. To Marcus Vaughn, to all the warriors who ran toward danger, who made the choice when it mattered most. Elara saluted her father's grave, felt the weight of his metal against her chest, felt the ache in her leg where shrapnel had become a part of her, felt the pride of knowing she had finally paid the debt her father created when he gave his life for another. "Thank you, Dad," she whispered, "for showing me what courage looks like." The rain fell, the formation held, and somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled like the sound of boots marching, like the sound of warriors who never stop serving. Because that is what they do. That is who they are, always faithful,